Good afternoon. My name is Todd Wilcox, and I'm proud to have this opportunity to introduce you to my husband. At first glance, some may see him as a tough guy, a James Bond turned successful entrepreneur, and, well, he is in fact all of those. But there is so much more to this man than meets the eye. Once you get to know him, you'll quickly realize that it's his personal qualities that have enabled him to succeed in the places he's been. Things like a strong work ethic, determination, and perseverance, for example. But what I would like for you to know is that underneath all of that is a man who is grounded by his roots, a man with a big heart, and a man who is fiercely passionate, especially about his family and our nation. One of the things that I admire most is that he has always stood up for what he believes in. Well, I'm following his lead and standing up for what I believe in, my husband. Ladies and gentlemen, your next United States Senator from the great state of Florida, Todd Wilcox.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Before we get started, I think we owe a big round of applause to Chairman Blaze and Goglia. Blaze and his team have done a great job putting this together, and I'm proud to be here to talk to you today. I want to start with the question that I get all the time, and that is, Todd, why are you doing this? And it's usually prefaced by the statement that, hey, you served your country in both peacetime and in war. You built a successful business. You've achieved the American dream. Why would you submit yourself to the rigors of a campaign and put your family through that kind of scrutiny? And my answer is, why aren't you? Why aren't we all? Let me put it into historical context. The average age of the world's greatest civilizations has been 200 years. Each of these failed nations have gone through the same sequence of events. From tyranny and bondage, the people embraced their spiritual faith. That spiritual faith inspired great courage, and that courage allowed them to rise up and win their freedom. The liberty led to abundance, and unfortunately, abundance led to selfishness. Selfishness led to apathy, and from apathy to dependence. From dependency, they went back into bondage. So the average age of the world's greatest civilizations has been 200 years. America was founded 239 years ago. Where do you think we're at in that sequence? Sadly, I fear that if we don't change course, our constitutional republic will pass over the horizon, and what will replace it has yet to be seen. I, for one, refuse to sit by and watch that happen. My name is Todd Wilcox, and that's the reason I'm running for the United States Senate. I want to tell you a little bit about my background, and you don't hear a lot of politicians talk about their history or their bio or their background. I'm going to tell you what I'm not. I'm not a politician. I've never run for public office, and I'm not a lawyer. I grew up here in Florida. I was one of 6 kids raised in a very poor family in South Tampa by a single mother. I learned early on in my teenage years that breaking out of poverty was only going to happen if I got a good education, and I earned an ROTC scholarship to the University of Tampa. Thank you. I graduated in 1989, and I was commissioned as a 2nd lieutenant in the regular Army. I went off to the infantry, and after Ranger School, I was stationed with the 101st Airborne Division. I led an infantry platoon in combat during Desert Storm, and when we returned, I volunteered for Special Forces. And after I earned my Green Beret, I commanded a Special Forces A team in East Asia. Thank you. In 1997, I resigned from the military as a major, and I joined the CIA. And after 2 years of Arabic, I posted to the Middle East as a CIA case officer in the global war on terrorism. My last combat assignment was as a CIA paramilitary officer supporting the global war on terrorism and the military in the Middle East. And my last assignment with the CIA was with the Joint Terrorism Task Force here in Orlando, working out of the FBI's office. In 2006, I resigned from government service altogether, and I started the first of 3 very successful businesses, all focused on America's political, diplomatic, economic, and military strength around the world. I tell you my story not because I'm a narcissist. As I said, I'm not a politician. I tell you my story because it's relevant to the decision you have on August 30th, 2016. We have a very important decision. Who are we going to nominate to be the next United States Senator from the great state of Florida? The decision you make may well determine whether we keep this seat in the Republican Party. If we cannot contrast a very moderate, well-funded Democratic candidate named Patrick Murphy, we will lose this seat. If we lose 4 seats in the Senate, Democrats take control of the Senate. We can't let that happen. If we nominate a candidate that represents a return to citizen government, we can keep this seat in the Republican Party. The choice you have in the primary is not who the most conservative candidate is. We are all going to tell you we are ultra-conservative. The choice you have is which candidate has real-world experience, which candidate can return us to a citizen government. We got to admit it, we are all fed up with career politicians. I have 26 years of real-world experience. I represent a return to citizen government. I have led men in combat more than once. I've served on the front lines. Hell, I've served behind enemy lines in the global war on terrorism. I've raised 2 daughters as a single parent for 6 years before I met the love of my life. I speak the language of our enemies. I've built successful businesses, I've put people to work, and I've signed the front of a paycheck, not just the back of one. I have a unique set of skills in building and leading small teams of high-performance individuals, sometimes with diverse backgrounds, all focused on accomplishing complex tasks in a very hostile environment. And I think that aligns with the Senate quite well. These skills precisely align with the 3 issues that are going to define this election: national security, our economy, and preserving our personal freedoms. In fact, defending our constitutional republic. Let's talk just a minute about those 3 issues. On national security, we have to realize that ISIS and Islamic terrorists are not only a threat to America, they're a threat to all of Western society. Our current lack of strategy out of this administration emboldens our enemies. Our military force structure is being gutted by the Obama administration, and the hard-left progressives want to take it even further at a time when we face a rising threat overseas. There's an asymmetric warfare threat that faces us, and our force structure is not aligned with that. And that needs to change. Our adversaries are playing chess while our president is playing checkers. And why is this important to Florida? Florida is the home of U.S. Special Operations Command at Tampa. It's the home of the Air Force Special Operations Command in Hurlburt Field. Charlie Company, 3rd Battalion, 7th Group, 7th Special Forces Group is also in the Panhandle. We got Patrick Air Force Base. We got naval air stations in Pensacola, Key West, and Jacksonville. Patrick Air Force Base in Melbourne. The force structure, beyond the fact that our capability and our deterrence is important to all Floridians, the force structure of our special operations and intelligence community has a direct impact on our economy. Who better to help formulate and to lead debate on fighting ISIS and Islamic extremists than an Arabic-speaking former CIA case officer who's been fighting the war on terrorism? Thank you. Who better to debate and lead and formulate force structure policy within the Department of Defense than a combat veteran of multiple wars? I have real-world experience in the economy as well. Our economy is growing at a dismal rate because of the hard-left progressive policies of this president and it's going to go even further left after the election if they win the White House. We have a bloated budget, and we have growing unfunded liabilities that nobody is talking about. These unfunded liabilities are not the $19 trillion debt every year. It's somewhere between $65 trillion and $120 trillion in unfunded liabilities that nobody's talking about in the form of Social Security, Medicare, and the retiree benefit packages for federal employees. This is an avalanche of debt that our grandchildren will not be able to pay off. And it is a grave concern that we can't dig out of this hole unless we change course. We have an overcomplicated tax system that is a burden on small and medium-sized businesses, literally a wet blanket on those who create the most jobs. We have never-ending entitlement programs that lock generations of poor people into economic slavery. Poor people have been voting Democrat for 50 years and they're still poor. Let's try something new. We have a broken Social Security system and unfunded pensions that suck 60% of our treasury every single year. Our infrastructure is crumbling all around us, and our education system is failing our children. Common Core was a very expensive top-down experiment that we are all rejecting. Our status as an industrialized nation has declined under the Obama administration. And capitalism is under attack every single day by a hard left progressive movement that wants to move us closer to socialism. Who better to formulate economic policy and roll back irrational regulation than a business leader who has created businesses? Who better to formulate common sense tax code than a business leader who has created 600 jobs? Who better to defend capitalism than a successful entrepreneur? I have real-world experience in the economy. Let's talk about our personal freedoms. Your personal freedoms are under attack every single day by an intrusive IRS, EPA, Department of Justice, and a Department of Education. There's a growing storm on the horizon that threatens our constitutional republic that nobody wants to talk about. We are moving closer and closer to a post-constitutional era. This is more dangerous than the growing ISIS threat. It's more dangerous than the growing trend of isolationist foreign policy. It's more dangerous than our broken immigration system. If you think about the tactics that the Obama administration has taken in cahoots with Harry Reid, they have circumvented the congressional power of the purse by using tactics of continuing resolutions that leave our Congress feebly enabling this post-constitutional era. We have 322 million Americans and only 119 million that are paying any federal income taxes. We're in jeopardy of losing our constitutional republic by an overarching executive branch that has made the Congress nearly irrelevant. The hard left progressive movement wants to implement massive, unchecked growth and spending, and they need to be stopped. The executive branch has implemented executive orders time and again with disregard to the rule of law and the Constitution. The hard left progressives see the government as the caretaker, giving cradle-to-grave care to all of us. We shouldn't forget what Thomas Jefferson said. A government big enough to give you everything you want is big enough to take everything you have. Alexis de Tocqueville wrote Democracy in America in 1840 after 5 years of observations, and he warned that American liberty was going to be threatened not by swashbuckling dictators or coups d'etats, but by the soft tyranny of a government that takes on the role of national nanny, providing for every care and defending every adversity against a child citizen. If we don't change course, I fear his predictions may come true. We have to ask ourselves, are we Rome? Who better to serve the people than a candidate that has established himself as independently wealthy and is not beholden to special interest groups? Who better to serve the people than a citizen government? And who better to hold Caesar in check than somebody that served in the Praetorian Guard. I appreciate Senator Marco Rubio's enthusiasm, and he's right. It's not too late. It's not impossible to turn this around. We can change course, and we have to change course. We've faced many challenges in the history of our nation, and impossible has never been a part of our vocabulary when we face those challenges. Lewis and Clark refused to accept that it was impossible to map the Western frontier, and manifest destiny became our reality. Abraham Lincoln refused to accept that it was impossible to keep the Union together, and today we live in the United States of America. John F. Kennedy refused to accept that it was impossible to put a man on the moon, and we did. And Ronald Reagan refused to accept that it was impossible that we could destroy the Soviet Union, and we won the Cold War. We in the special operations and intelligence community refused to accept that it was impossible to find, fix, and kill Osama bin Laden, and we did. So I do not accept that it is impossible for us to restore American prominence. In fact, impossible is merely a big word thrown around by small men who find it easier to live in the world they've been given than to explore the power they have to change it. Well, I'm exploring the power I have to change it. My name is Todd Wilcox, and I am a rational, constitutional conservative candidate for the United States Senate. And I would ask you to go to my website, Todd Wilcox 2016, and help me win the fight to restore America's prominence. I have self-funded $500,000 in my campaign, and I'm calling on you as a call to service to join me. Join me in the fight to restore America's prominence. God bless you all, and God bless America.